The coin left upon the polished granite of the house of black and white was neither gold nor silver, but a thin lozenge of dragonglass, smoky black and lit from within by pale blue motes that seemed to drift like trapped fireflies. No inscription marked it, yet the coin sang a name that could only be heard by those who had given up every name they once possessed. A serving girl with a dead girl's face lifted it between thumb and forefinger. The stone was cold enough to burn. In the dim light of the sanctuary, the coin's glimmer washed over the visages of 1,000 gods. Old and new, masks of burnished bronze and rotting wood, painted terracotta saints beside pale maiden statues whose cracked lips still whispered prayers. The serving girl set the coin upon the silent scales, opposite a severed tongue, payment for some small mercy rendered the previous night. The dragonglass tipped the balance at once, as though it weighed a mountain. The many-faced god had accepted the offering. She bent the knee. "A life is owed," she murmured in bravosi, and her breath rose in curling mist despite the summer heat. From the shadows behind the pillars drifted the one who tended the hall when all lanterns guttered. A tall figure garbed in robes the color of bone dust, whose cowl concealed the smooth neutrality of a borrowed face. Some named him Jakin Hagar. Others swore he was no man at all. He lifted the coin, blue sparks pooling in his palm like frozen stars. "To whom is this life forfeit?" the girl asked. Jakin turned the coin so its gleam washed over her borrowed cheeks. "Not a life," he corrected, voice softer than snowfall. "A death, a very old death that walks." The dragonglass pulsed once, and the torches along the walls shivered as if struck by a wind from beyond the world of men. The face beneath the ice. The girl felt the air thicken. Somewhere beyond the walls of Bravos, in a land she had glimpsed only in sailors' tales, Winter himself had risen long ago and donned a crown of jagged frost. Even the dead bowed before him. "The price for such death is high," she whispered. "It has been paid." Jakin let the coin fall, and as it struck his palm again the blue sparks bled out, leaving only glossy black stone. "Steel alone will not serve, nor poison, nor any art you have practiced. Yet a gift must be given. Then one of us will go." A nod. One who has forgotten every name, every tether, every warmth. One whose life is already spent. The serving girl straightened. "This one will go." Northward they sailed through summer squalls and the yawning mouths of autumn storms. Their vessel was a Nor manned by Lorati smugglers who asked no questions and accepted payment only in silence. Fog clung to the sea like wet wool, and when the moon broke free its light seemed dulled, as though rained by unseen hands. Ice floes thickened. Seals barked upon floes like monks at prayer. Finally, the hull ground against an iron-bound shore where gray cliffs loomed like broken tombstones. The Lorati made warding signs as the assassins stepped onto the strand. "You go beyond maps now, girl," their captain rasped. "Turn back, lest the cold eat your shadow." She offered him no answer, only a smile that did not belong to the face she wore. With a pack of needles and wires, phials of heart-slow herbs, a pouch of scarlet powder stolen from an alchemist in Karth, and the coin, always the coin, she trudged inland. Snow began almost at once, fine as sifted flour, and the world dwindled to variations of white and the iron smell of her own breath. On the second night she built a shelter beneath the leaning roots of a dead weirwood whose visage had been hacked away, leaving only scar tissue and a hollow where the heart face once wept sap. She dreamed of eyes the color of glacier ice opening in the dark. "Even gods may be slain," they promised, "if first you learn their true name." At dawn a shadow moved upon the slope, a ragged line of wildlings fleeing southward, gaunt and hollow-eyed, pulling half-starved children on travois of birch poles. The assassin joined their column with quiet ease, her face shifting from child to crone to wounded boy in the span of an hour. Faceless men learned the morphologies of despair. None questioned her. Rumors passed down the shivering ranks like shared lice. Villages razed without flame, the dead trudging behind white-eyed riders, the weirwood leaves turning black where the army of winter passed. They spoke, too, of a blue-eyed giant astride an elk made of ice, of women taken in silence and returned as whites still suckling infants now stilled forever. Yet when she asked of a king, their words failed. No man had truly seen him. He was a rumor inside a rumor, a depthless hunger inside every snowflake. The assassin listened while stitching cracked feet and frostbitten fingers. She gathered their tales like a weaver storing wool, for every tale held a thread that might unspool a truth. At the edge of her conscience, the coin burned against her breast. When they reached the wall, the wildlings found the great gate barred with iron and fear. New forged stakes bristled from the ground, glimmering with obsidian arrowheads. Brothers of the Night's Watch shouted parley from atop the battlements, but no one dared open the gate until Maester Wolken descended, bookish eyes wide above his furs. He counted the refugees, catalogued their wounds, and at last summoned courage to unbolt the great oak timbers. As the column shambled through the icy tunnel, torches hissed, and warm air tasted of tannin and smoke. The assassin's false face was that of a mute boy when the maester pressed a clay token into her palm granting passage south. She bowed, eyes lowered. Maester Wolken saw only a silent child. Never the lines of a bravosi bravo, never the cold intellect behind the borrowed gaze. She walked on, yet south was not her destination. That night, beneath the castle black shadows, she bled her poncho against the snow, leaving footprints leading outward. Then she doubled back into the tunnel, climbed hidden stairs, and emerged atop the wall where sentries drowsed under blankets of familiarity. A rope was all she needed, a silent descent into the haunted forest. From there she moved north, alone. Forests ceded to tundra to sweeping plains of ice that cracked like rotting teeth. The sky dimmed, until even daylight resembled twilight glimpsed through dirty glass. Here she found the dead. They traveled in columns beneath the ringing silence of the aurora, their footfalls crunching like 1,000 timber wolves gnawing old bones. Snow drifted through rib cages, clothed them in shifting rags of white. Their eyes burned blue as the sparks trapped in the coin.
No, Braiter inexhaustible.
She could not shadow them. They would lead her only to greater masses of whites, every step deeper into death's dominion. Instead, she studied their march as a maester might study riddles. Who herded them, how often, by what signals? Always she searched for the one who herded them all. For weeks or hours or years, time became elastic. She crouched behind wind-carved spires, ate lichen scraped from black stones, drank meltwater thick with dust older than kingdoms. Sometimes she hummed bravosi lullabies to remember warmth, but the wind snatched sound from her lips. One dusk she heard a horn. Its note was long and mournful, yet resonant as temple bells beneath water. From every quarter the dead turned, rearranging their ranks with impossible accord until their file resembled lines etched in crystal. Between the ranks strode warriors of ice whose armor chimed like brittle glass, their brows crowned by curling horns frozen mid-bleed. They carried spears taller than longships, wrought of translucent stone. But at their center came a stillness so total it seemed the world itself forgot to breathe. He rode no steed. The ground molded beneath him, ice reshaping to cradle his strides. Antlers of hoarfrost sprouted from his skull helm, and in his palm he carried absence, the shadow of a sword the color of frozen smoke. Where he passed, the air went silent, the snow lost its white, and colors faded into an endless dusk. Eyes of vault blue swept the horizon. The assassin felt her heart still. In that instant she understood. Steel could never reach him, poison could not foul a body already beyond decay, and even a face stealer's art meant nothing to a king who had abandoned every face long before the pyramids of Valyria cooled. Yet a coin had been placed upon the scales, and the many-faced god demanded balance. The assassin retreated into a ravine where scoured rock offered shelter from the watchers. There, she unpacked the tools no teacher had given her. Devices pondered in silence across a lifetime of service. A vial of Shadowbinder ink from ass-high, a length of wind-dry nettle twisted into a lover's knot, 2 beans of black blood poppy, a cracked mirror recovered from a lost Roynish temple. She arrayed them upon white stone, then crushed the poppy between her teeth. Dream venom climbed her veins like ivy-seeking sun. She watched her hands melt into smoke, reform as a girl she once was before bravos, dissolve again into a swirl of color. Face upon face spun away until at last only blankness remained, the true self hiding behind all disguises. Into that emptiness she invited cold. Into that void she whispered a single name, no one. When she opened her eyes, the world had slowed to the pulse of glaciers. She saw lines of force spiraling about the Night King, webs of history woven by the children of the forest, strands where sunlight once glinted yet now frayed. The bindings that tethered him to unlife were not chains but stories. A tale told by leaf-eyed sorcerers beside black pools, kept alive by fear, by prophecy, by the memory of ancient wrongs. Break a story, and the shape breaks with it. Thus she began to write a new story. Using Shadowbinder ink, she scrawled glyphs upon the cracked mirror, the Bravosi sigil for sacrifice overlaid with the Old Tongue rune for unmaking. Around the mirror she sprinkled dust ground from the dragonglass coin until the glass turned opaque. Last, she bled into the grooves, just enough to tinge the ink, to invite the many-faced god to look upon her labor. Blood steamed on contact with obsidian. The mirror drank it in. When wind hissed through the ravine, she held the mirror aloft, angling its blank surface toward the distant procession. The Night King's lightless sword flickered, as if glimpsing itself in that false glass, a shadow seeing its own echo. He turned, blue eyes narrowed. Frost crept from his footfalls toward the ravine, shearing stone with microfractures that rang like ghostly bells. Yet he did not quicken pace, nor raise his blade. Instead he watched as the assassin pressed the mirror to her own face. Pain tore through marrow. Every visage she had ever worn fractured at once. The mute boy, the serving girl, the sailor's widow, even the child she might have been had life followed gentler roads. Shards of identity whirled outward, drew the Night King's gaze. In that moment, she offered him what faceless men reserve for only the worthiest deaths. Her own face, stripped of masks, laid bare. The Night King stepped forward, as though compelled by a force older than will. The silence between them thickened until it became unbearable. An unseen axis tilted, and snowflakes hanging midair reversed course, spiraling into the mirror where they winked out like snuffed candles. The assassin whispered, "Vala Morgulis." Impossible cold slammed against her ribs, pierced heart and lung. She fell, yet did not yield the mirror. The glyphs blazed violet, cracks spider-webbed across the obsidian from within, light leaking out in sheets of ghost fire. The Night King raised his sword, a gesture ponderous as tectonic drift, and plunged it through his own reflection. Mirror and blade met with no shatter of glass. Instead, the blade sank as though into deep water. A scream unlike any living sound tore across the plain, thunder without sky. The Night King convulsed. Frost antlers shattered. Blue fire spilled from his eye sockets, rippled down his veins, igniting them into lines of molten azure that seared flesh yet left it unscarred. Light poured from him, not outward but inward, as if the mirror drank his essence. Far across the tundra, whites halted mid-stride, their joints locked, fingers reaching skyward in silent question. Then they folded like marionettes whose strings had been cut and lay still upon the snow. Ice cracked beneath the assassin, the ground trembling like a drumhead. She tasted blood, felt her vision smear. Yet she kept the mirror angled until the last flicker of blue flame vanished within its depths. Only then did she let it fall. The Night King stood unmarred, yet empty. His sword, no longer a shadow but brittle ice, slipped from his grasp and shattered upon rock. He looked upon his hands, as if unable to recall why they existed, why anything existed. Wind sighed through his ragged armor. A final mote of frostlight pulsed in his chest, then winked out. He collapsed, ice splintering under his weight. Snow devoured him, drawing veil after veil across the frozen contour until nothing remained but a slight depression that might have been footstep or memory. The assassin crawled to the broken mirror. The surface was now dull lead. Her own reflection stared back. No mask, no borrowed guise. She saw a face she did not know, yet recognized as the sum of every life stolen and given. Tears froze upon her cheeks. Something stirred beside her. Jackeen Hagar, impossibly present, kneeling where no tracks led. He touched her shoulder, gentle as twilight on water. "A girl has paid," he said. "A debt is balanced." "Come." She looked past him. Across the plain, dawn's first light painted the sky rose gold. A thawing wind shrugged powder from skeletal trees and scattered crystals like shattered prisms. Silence reigned, but it was a living silence, full of breath and waiting birdsong. The assassin tried to rise. Pain lanced white. Jackeen supported her, and together they walked southward, leaving behind the grave of a god no songs would name. They reached the wall weeks later, or perhaps moments. Their journey erased itself as snow falling into a river. Brothers of the Watch found them at a deserted gate, the assassin barely conscious. They carried her into torchlight and laid her upon straw. When they tried to swaddle her in blankets, she smiled through cracked lips and whispered of debts repaid, of faceless kindness. That night she slept as herself for the first time. In dreams she was a little girl chasing pigeons through bravos under a summer sun that never set. She did not wake. The watchman burned her upon a low pyre beside Castle Black, and the smoke lifted skyward like a gray banner of surrender. No one knew her name, so they wrote on their rolls. Arya Stone, a girl of no house, died of the cold. The flames cracked and hissed, scattering embers that twirled upward to meet snowflakes flickering down. Far overhead, auroras unfurled in waves of emerald and violet. Some claimed they resembled shattered chains. Others saw the passing of a great bird. To the south, beyond mountains, beyond seas, the bells of bravos tolled 3 times. Once for death, once for debt, once for a girl who had no name and thus belonged to every tale told beside fires on winter nights. And somewhere beneath the citadel in Old Town, maesters recording that strange dawn would note a minor but curious phenomenon. All dragonglass within their vaults lost its midnight hue, growing clear as river ice, as though stripped of the last sorrow of the world. The coin remained upon the scales in the house of black and white, now featureless crystal. It balanced an empty plate where once a severed tongue had lain. The many-faced god requires only equilibrium. Names rise, kings fall, but story endures, bending ever toward the weight of nothingness and the gift of mercy. In Bravos, a novice sweeping the sanctuary glanced at that crystal coin and felt an unnameable chill, as though winter had breathed across distant oceans into her marrow. She thought she heard words echo beneath the masks. Vala Morgulus. But when she turned, the hall was silent once more, listening for the next coin to tip the world. The dawn that bled across the sky above Castle Black surprised the ravens first. They came wheeling out of the rookery in an untidy cloud, croaking dissonant chords that sent shards of echo skipping along the wall's hoarfrost merlins. Brothers of the Night's Watch looked up from their watchfires and muttered oaths, for the birds' black wings flashed argent where sunlight struck them, bright as if each pinion were edged in quicksilver. None could recall having seen the like, and it soured the taste of their porridge. Samwell Tarly noticed the change in the raven's plumage. At the same moment, he discovered that every dragonglass dagger stored in the strongbox beside the rookery had turned perfectly translucent. Knives that had once drunk the light now shone with a clarity so pure they might have been sculpted from morning dew. Sam held one up, turning it over, watching the rune scratches inside the blade sparkle like dust suspended in cathedral beams. The dagger felt lighter, almost eager, and for the first time since John set him to studying books of old Valyrian glyphs, Sam believed he could see every letter plainly, yet none remained. The glyphs had bled away, leaving faint grooves that sang beneath his thumb like the lines in a seashell. He hurried down the spiral stairs to Maester Wolken, whose kettle was already screaming. They spread the weapons across a trestle table in the infirmary, poking, pricking, trying to draw blood from boiled leeches and strips of salted pork. Nothing. The daggers slid through flesh as a needle through cobweb, but there was no venom left in them. Sam's hand trembled when he realized the dragonglass no longer drank heat. Each blade lay cool as hoarfrost, yet the surface never fogged, no matter how Wolken breathed on it. Outside the window, snowmelt dribbled down the stones in thin silver snakes. It was mid-autumn, yet the air smelled faintly of spring. A warmth had come crawling from the south overnight, soft as the first breath of a newborn. "Something's broken," Wolken murmured, rolling a dagger between calloused fingers. "Or mended." Sam thought of John, of iron wolves flying on banners above Winterfell, of a girl with gray eyes drifting somewhere beyond maps. "Maybe both," he said. 2 days later, a watchman on the eastern parapet spotted figures moving along the King's Road. Refugees, yes, but walking in rhythm instead of stumbling, as though a single heartbeat timed their feet. Brother Daniel blew his horn once, riders approaching, and one of the new recruits went fixing the chain lever to raise the gate. When they opened the tunnel mouth, the shapes came closer, resolving into a tide of bodies. Dead bodies. Only they were not walking. They lay strewn like broken gargoyles across the road's uneven stones. Some were locked in strange contortions. Arms arched like dancers mid-flight, legs buckled inward, jaws yawning at the gray sky with tongues shriveled violet. None bled. Frost rhymed every eyelash. They had fallen where shadow struck them. Some mid-lunge, others turned toward unseen prey. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands, strewn north and south as far as the wall's shadow reached. Sam rode out with a party of 10, spades strapped to saddle thongs. The horses kept snorting, eyes rolling white. When Toad prodded the nearest corpse with his spear, its arm cracked at the elbow like brittle clay. No blue fire burned in its sockets. No chill spread toward their boots. Only the stink remained, musty, damp, like a root cellar flooded in a thaw. That night they lit bonfires the size of storehouses, feeding dead flesh to cleansing flame until sparks spiraled miles into cloudless dark. The pyres smoked for 3 days. Men who had lived half their lives on the wall swore they felt heat for the first time seep all the way into marrow. When the last corpse crumbled into coarse black ash, a mild rain fell, gentle as a mother's hush, and tamped the embers to sullen rubies. Maester Wolken collected handfuls of gray residue in waxed cloth. He meant to send it south by Raven, trusting some archmaester might divine what manner of spell had died up north. Sam doubted the citadel possessed any glass strong enough to hold the answers. South of the neck, fires burned for different reasons. On Flint's Finger 3 villages had kindled watch beacons to guide fisherfolk home through late-season fog. On the Bar Rolands, shepherds set old barrows aflame to drive out barrow wights that never arrived. At Winterfell, the ancient towers glowed like iron fresh from forge. Lord Stark, still king in name though he claimed none, ordered every hearth fed double until each stone drank warmth. Jon Snow stood upon the battlements beside the broken king's tower, pearl-white direwolf lounging at his boots, staring north where wisps of haze smeared the horizon. Ghost raised his muzzle, then lowered it again, ears flicking. Jon's gloved fingers ruffled thick fur almost subconsciously. Usually the wolf's red eyes shimmered with alertness, sensing things beyond human ken. Today Ghost seemed content, almost lazy. A fresh raven perched on the parapet, head cocked, a thread of wax dangling from the scroll bound to its anklet. It regarded Jon solemnly until he unbound the message. Sam's cramped hand told of dead legions turned to driftwood, of weapons turned clear, of warmth returning to stones that had never known it. Jon read the words twice, then passed them to Davos Seaworth. Ser Davos's mouth quirked beneath gray beard. He traced lines as though probing for trickery. At last he shrugged. "I'll never say your friend Sam's a liar," he muttered. "But this reads like a singer's fancy. Dead just stopping." Jon stared across the yard where smiths shaped new dirks from castle-forged steel. He remembered Hard Home, remembered a blanket of corpses rising beneath moonlight. He remembered swords shattering like glass against that king's ice, the way blue fire ate a man's courage. Sam was telling him the Night King had fallen. Jon felt no joy, only hollowness, as if some quiet, unvoiced part of him had cracked. He had once thought victory glorious. Now it felt like a house missing a roof. You only realized the roof mattered once rain came. The storm that hung above Westeros now was not of snow, but of words, alliances, old wrongs thawing with the frost. "Saddle the horses," Jon said, voice hoarse. "I ride tonight. I need my own eyes on those fires." Davos tucked the scroll into his sleeve. Who wears Winterfell's crown in your absence? Jon gazed down. In the yard below, Sansa Stark directed men raising fresh palisades. Her auburn hair tied up, cheeks flushed from cold. The one who keeps it warmer than I ever could, he answered. They reached the Bar Rollins at dawn 5 days later, passing hamlet after hamlet where farmers tilled half-frozen fields as though frostbite were a legend. Children flew kites carved from root vegetable skins. The rags snapped in wind that smelled of thaw. When Jon crossed into the gift, he found fields of ash where wildling bodies had been laid to rest, Sam's bonfires. Crows wheeled overhead in slow circles, occasionally dipping to peck some forgotten bone before flapping skyward with startled caws. No white rose to chase them away. Jon dismounted near the largest scorch patch, snow crusting around his boots. He knelt, brushing gloved fingers across powder-fine remains. Ghost sniffed, then turned south, as if whatever scent he sought no longer lingered here. The ash smudged between Jon's fingertips like charcoal. He thought of Shireen Baratheon's doll of carved ashwood, burnt at the stake for a god's whisper. How many sacrifices had fed winter's hunger? How many more would the world demand to repay what had been borrowed? The Night King's demise did not balance every scale, not for the living who carried scars beneath wool and steel. Snow began falling again by dusk, yet it lacked the bite he remembered. Each flake settled soft, melted slowly. Jon led his party to the Queen's Crown ruins and camped. That night a dream took him. A girl with a different face knelt before a mirror made of night. She lifted it, and his own reflection stared back. Eyes blue as deep sea, skin cracked, veins glowing. Yet, in the reflection he was weeping. Tears carved channels through frost. When Jon woke, Ghost whined softly and nuzzled his side. Jon pressed his brow to the direwolves and breathed until morning. Across the shivering sea, Jaqen Hagar stepped into the vaulted sanctum at the heart of the House of Black and White, feet soundless upon black marble. He had walked from the docks through rain that came and went like skipped heartbeats. The city smelled of salt and dust and moss growing between cobbles. Bravos seldom slept, yet tonight the winding lanes had felt subdued, as if the little gods themselves were holding breath. The kindly man stood beside the image of the Worm of Lys, candles guttering at his feet. The crystal coin rested upon the balance scales, perfectly level now. Jaqen approached, bowing. "The debt is rendered," he said, voice washed of inflection. The kindly man studied the coin. Candlelight fractured through it into spindles, painting rainbow ghosts upon vaulting arches. "Some debts cannot be tallied," he murmured. "Yet still they weigh. The girl's name, no one." The kindly man dipped his chin. "Names vanish in the water, but echoes remain." He reached into his robe, drawing forth a small stoppered phial containing a droplet of liquid so dark it swallowed flame. "The coin's balance is true, but the world is not. A shadow has been removed. Its absence makes a cavity. Cavities draw substance." Jaqen's mouth curved faintly, expression or twitch, none could say. "A story begins," he agreed, "where the last one ended." He laid a second object upon the marble, a chip of iced crystal, no larger than a fingernail, carved in the shape of a tear. Light slid across its facets yet found no purchase, as if each plane bent brightness into some unseen spectrum. "The Night King's final memory," Jaqen said. The kindly man tilted his head, listening to silence. After a long breath, he nodded. "The many-faced god will place this into the crypt of stories. The girl has opened a door that cannot be closed." "Doors," Jaqen corrected softly. "There are always two sides." At the citadel, Archmaester Marwyn the mage lifted a monocle of thick jade to peer at the piece of clear dragonglass Sam's raven had delivered. Smoke wheeled beneath the glass like serpents. He frowned, twisting the lens's golden rim. "It is not empty," he muttered to Pate, who had long ago traded pig-boy sweat for the heavy scent of parchment. "It's filled with absence, which is heavier than lead, if you measure properly." Archmaester Valen Quince entered, robe trailing musty vellum scent. Weather reports show unseasonable warmth as far north as Last Hearth, he said without preamble. Some would call that blessing. Marwyn snorted. Those who call a wound healed because bleeding stopped forget the festering beneath. He tapped the dragonglass hilt with an iron stylus. Magic is balance. Remove one anchor and tides shift. Perhaps this warmth is the ocean rushing to fill what winter drained. Quince folded thin hands. Then what will rush in to fill the ocean once it departs? Marwyn smiled, a wolf among goats. Whatever form it takes, we best learn its name before it writes ours. East of V's Duthrak, the mother of mountains glimmered under a moon thin as a flensing knife. In the shadow of broken idols, a crone in dusky silks pressed her ear to earthen crevices. The Dash Kaleen measured omens by the hiss of water deep below, by the direction of scorpions scuttling across sacrificial embers. Tonight the scorpions gathered in a perfect circle around the ashes, refusing to cross inward. Smoke from the fire pit coiled upward, forming the vague silhouette of a woman whose features shifted each time flame licked the air. The crone bowed until forehead touched dust. "Khaleesi," she whispered, though no queen of the Dothraki stood near. But across the narrow sea, on Dragonstone's wind-lashed parapets, Daenerys Targaryen dreamed of a mirror breaking. She woke, gasping, palms coated in sweat that steamed in torchlight. Drogon roared somewhere above, louder than thunder cracked against marble vaults. Tyrion Lannister came stumbling in with parchments in hand. "Word from the wall," he began, but his breath caught when he saw her eyes burning like twin forges. "Perhaps another time," he murmured. She rose without robe, skin glowing as though fire licked under it. "Tell me," she insisted. Tyrion read Sam's letter shakily. By the time he reached the words clear dragonglass, Drogon's roars had subsided into rumbling purrs. "Winter undone," Daenerys whispered. "Then perhaps spring is mine to claim." She strode to the window, hair whipping silver threads across her shoulders. Storm clouds parted, revealing 3 dragons circling like sparks blown from Vulcan's Anvil. A world where men call themselves kings again may forget women are dragons. Tyrion swallowed. "Or remember," he ventured, "and tremble." In the belly of Winterfell's Godswood, Bran Stark sat beneath the heart tree, veins glowing faint green behind pupils turned milky white. Through weirwood roots he had felt the Night King depart the story, felt the tremor of cosmic threads recoiling like snapped harp strings. Now he pushed further, slipping into a current of memory older than bones, until he stood in a snow-choked clearing stinking of pine tar. There were no men here, only beasts carved in shadow, antlers of obsidian, pelts woven from star-specked fur. They sang not with mouths but with heartbeats, and Bran felt vibrations shaping patterns of possibility. Songs of ice pairing with flame, water bending to sky, stone dreaming of wind. One note rang discordant, a yawning gap where something had once resonated. The beasts turned their luminous eyes upon Bran. He tried to speak, but his tongue was a root clogged in mud. Through them he sensed the hole left by that discord. It pulled at every string in the pattern, wanting to be filled. Into that vacuum, any discordant chord could fall and lodge, new rule crafted of old ruin. The song would change. He saw images flash within the gap. A red comet trailing sorrow, cold stars devouring themselves, a face with many faces folding like petals. Then a hand reached through and plucked a single thread, gently, so gently, and tied it to another. Balance, not finality. The gap neither widened nor closed. It shifted, waiting. When Bran returned to his body, ravens clung to branches overhead, eyes black pinpricks in frost-white spheres. They stared as though expecting an answer. Bran brushed one feather-coated limb. The bird hopped away, dropping a shard of clear stone at his feet. He picked it up. In its depth he saw his own face wearing winter's crown. Then the image melted into ripples. He slipped the shard into a pouch for Jon. Some burdens must be shared. Beyond the ruins of Moat Cailin, a ragged procession of ironborn hauled longships across mud slicks, sails shredded. Victarion Greyjoy strode among them, arms blackened from Kraken ink tattoos. He had sailed upriver hoping to reap spoils from the wars of men, yet birds carried news. The dead no longer walked, the dragons ready to fly across fields still damp with meltwater. Victarion demanded offerings to the drowned god. He burned thralls alive, that their screams might echo across the sea. But flame overcame salt. No resurrection answered. He looked south then, not north, and spat into the tame water. The lull in winter's wrath gave strength to smaller storms. Reavers sharpened axes, tasted wind, felt the pull of warless shores. Where the dead once threatened, the living would march, and conquest tasted sweeter without white shadows to hog glory. At dusk on the 21st day after the Night King's fall, Jon Snow rode through the gates of Winterfell. Sansa waited by the well, cloak crimson as still cool embers. Jon dismounted, sagging with exhaustion. He thought of words: victory, thaw, sacrifice. Instead he spoke Sam's name, voice cracking. Sansa read the letter. Sheet shook in her fist. "We light torches," she decided, "for those who won't see spring after all." Jon nodded. Around them, the castle stirred gently, like a bear waking from half-sleep. Not roaring, not yet. His heart thudded where hope and grief wrestled. Winter's stories had ended. Something unnamed began. On Dragonstone's water stairs, Missandei watched sailors unloading barrels of obsidian arrowheads that Varys had once claimed might save the world. She wondered how soon the queen would order them melted for trade goods or recast into trinkets. When she dipped her hand into seawater sloshing against the quay, it felt warmer than she remembered. A single translucent shard bumped her knuckles, glass smooth, light as thought. She palmed it, hiding it in sleeve. Sometimes worthless things proved hardest to throw away. Deep under Bravos, Jaqen knelt in a chamber where no torches burned. The dark here had flavor, rich as ink spilled upon old vellum. He set the tear-shaped crystal into a niche carved to resemble an eye without iris. The stone adhered as though sucked into bone. Instantly the air resonated, a faint hum throbbing through Jaqen's jawbones like a bell toll too distant to hear. Above him, the city's canals rippled though no wind passed. Lanterns guttered along the drowned market. Old women looked up from counting coppers, heart stuttering. They crossed themselves. Jaqen turned and left without hurry. He passed a novice in the pillared hall, sweeping dust. Her broom froze mid-stroke as a whisper brushed her ear, words in no tongue spoken. She blinked, searching, but saw only the ebb of a faceless shadow gliding into black. She thought she heard the hush of mirrors cracking. 3 nights later, Jon Snow dreamed again. He stood upon a field of still water stretched to every corner of the void. Stars unspooled their filaments overhead until sky and lake mirrored one another. In the center of the nothingness burned a solitary coin, spinning. One side bore the direwolf's head, the other, an obscene crown of frost. The coin slowed, wobbled, toppled, yet never struck the surface. It hovered, waiting. Jon reached but felt no limbs, only will. Then a girl appeared across the mirror's glass. No older than Arya had been once, eyes gray and endless. She balanced upon needle-thin toes and blew the coin gently. It spun again, faster, edges blurring. Jon woke with a word on his lips that tasted of iron and snow and tears. No one. Ghost's heartbeat thundered beside his. Dawn crept beneath the shutters, and Winterfell's bells rang faintly. Outside, children chased each other across dewy grass, shrieking laughter as though winter's tales were ghost stories told to younger cousins. Jon wiped sweat from his brow. He rose, and when he looked into the wash basin, the water's surface showed his reflection warped by a thin crack of light. He dipped a finger. The crack vanished. But he had seen it, he would not forget. Ravens flew south in 2s and 3s, carrying conflicting rumors. Some said spring would come early. Others claimed the long night had merely paused. Farmers buried seeds in soil still laced with frost, hedging prayers between Seven and old gods. Somewhere in the Dornish desert, red priests shouted of a sacrifice redeemed. On the Isle of Faces, the green dreamers listened to leaves gossip and wondered whether to rejoice or weep. In every corner of Westeros, men and women woke in sweat from dreams where mirrors shattered, where faces peeled away to reveal masks of snow. Fisherfolk along the fingers reported finding clear stones in their nets, cold to the touch yet warm at heart. Sailors hurled them overboard. Children pocketed them for play. Balance had shifted, not settled. The world held its breath between heartbeats, listening for the next story to tip the scales. Somewhere west of the Sunset Sea, a storm rose, coiling black thunderheads that tasted of brine and blood. And somewhere beneath a vault of bone and shadow, a coin spun on a scale that never slept, the whisper of its turning sounding like distant wings. Vala Morgulis. But not today. The first snows of true winter, no longer the strange, half-melted flurries that had drifted weeks earlier, came down over Winterfell at twilight. Flocks of downy flakes settled on slate roofs and stone battlements, turning the fortress into a hush of grays and silvers that glimmered under torchlight. Jon Snow watched them fall from the high rampart above the inner ward. The cold in the air felt familiar again, but muted, as though winter itself were uncertain how sharply it ought to bite. Somewhere deep in his bones, Jon sensed that the world was learning a new rhythm after centuries of keeping time by the Night King's pulse. The yard below thrummed with activity in spite of the hour. Wagons carrying barrels of fresh-pressed cider and sacks of smoked trout had arrived from White Harbor. Gifts sent by Wyman Manderley in celebration of the miracles whispered along every northern road. Dragonglass gone clear, dead armies collapsed, warmth seeping up through frozen topsoil. Yet Jon knew that miracles were seldom free. He thought of Maester Wolken's raven that morning. A second letter from Sam, longer, more anxious. Something about resonant voids and absences that must be answered. Sam's quill had scratched the parchment so fiercely that flecks of ink peppered the margins. Behind Jon, the door to the rampart groaned open. Sansa stepped out, drawing her crimson cloak tight beneath her chin. Snowflakes caught in her hair like tiny rubies. She stood beside her brother without speaking, watching the lanterns being lit one by one around the yard until Winterfell flickered like an iron candelabra. At last she said, "I never trusted stories of monsters under beds when I was a girl. Now the monsters have vanished, and somehow I trust that even less." Her breath plumed in the lamplight. Jon rubbed his gloved thumbs together. The worst tales aren't about monsters, but about people who believe they're gone for good. They lingered in the quiet that followed, each listening to the small sounds that fill a castle settling for night. The thunk of axes splitting kindling, the creak of leather, a cook's soft curses over a kettle gone to scorch. Then Jon cleared his throat. "I've had dreams," he admitted, eyes on the falling snow. A coin spinning, a girl without a face, mirrors cracking. Ghost wakes me with his teeth clenched so tight his gums bleed. Jon almost laughed, but the sound died. I don't know whether the dreams are memories of something that happened, or warnings of what might. Sansa's hand closed around his forearm. Her grip was steadier than his own. Dreams are stories we tell ourselves when we can't bear the truth straight, but they can still be true. What do yours say? If you strip away the riddles, that we've taken summit. Hang out of the world, Jon said slowly, and the hole it left is pulling everything toward it. Sansa inhaled sharply. Then we must be ready before something else fills it. She released him and turned back toward the door. Tomorrow we hold council. Lords and ladies from every corner of the north, and from beyond the neck if they'll come. We'll need grain tallies, marshalling lists, healers' inventories, anything that tells us what strength we still possess. She paused, softening. Rest tonight, Jon. We'll have enough to haunt us in daylight. Jon nodded. He watched her descend the stairs, her cloak flaring like a banner in some silent wind. When she vanished, he leaned on the parapet, letting snow gather in his hair until cold soaked through to scalp and jarred him awake. He felt the coin spin in his mind, glimmering silver on one face, black ice on the other. Balance, the voice in his dreams whispered. Keep the balance or perish beneath it. On the wind-scoured heights of the Eyrie, Rabar Royce stood on a frost-slick balcony outside the high hall. The skies had cleared so completely after a week of soft, uncanny warmth that every star over the vale burned fierce enough to cast pale shadows across the moon-white ramparts. Below him, the mountain peaks glittered like heaps of cut diamonds. Lord Peter Baelish, still nursing the titles Protector of the Vale and Lord Paramount, though some whispered they were robes sewn from stolen cloth, joined Rabar, rubbing gloveless hands together for show. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, casting a sly sidelong glance at the night. One could almost forget angry winters ever existed. Rabar did not return the smile, or that summer snows ever fell at all. "What do you want, Lord Baelish?" Littlefinger's grin deepened. "So direct. I came only to admire the night, and perhaps to remind Ser Rabar that men who bring gifts of foresight are seldom repaid with suspicion. You sent no gifts, only rumors." Royce's breath spiraled from his lips like steam from a forge. "Dead armies crumbling, yes. Dragonglass turned to crystal, yes. But you also claim Winterfell is mustering an army to march south. That the saviors of the realm wish to depose the boy lord here. That seems unlikely." "Unlikely." Peter folded arms across his chest, letting the cold rays bumps beneath his silk doublet. "Some say Jon Snow is tired of crowns altogether, that he will lay his at the foot of the Iron Throne when the time comes. Such humility might unsettle lords who spilled blood to make him king. A man who spurns power is more dangerous than one who craves it." He leaned closer. "If I were Jon, I'd put my house in order before others decide the order for me. A visit to the Eyrie, perhaps. A quiet demand for obedience." Royce's granite features did not shift. "And you, I suppose, would stand alongside him? Or perhaps behind him, until the wind changed?" Littlefinger's chuckle was soft as muffled bells. "I stand where opportunity flowers, Ser. There's talk of spring dawning early this year. Gardens will need careful tending." Royce had heard enough. He turned to leave. As he reached the archway, Baelish called after him, voice thin in the freezing air. "Winterfell's raven arrived this afternoon. A great council in 2 fortnights' time. All northern lords sworn or allied. Perhaps you should ask yourself why the Starks invite every neighbor save one." Royce paused only an instant, then strode into the torchlit corridor. Littlefinger remained on the balcony, gazing at constellations. In the valley far below, torchlines wound through mountain switchbacks. House Grafton's baggage train climbing the stone road to the Moon Gate, unaware that the snows ahead were no longer certain to heed any season's rule. East of Pentos, the River Royne glimmered beneath starlight like a silver serpent shedding its skin. A single poleboat drifted in its gentle current, its hull laden with barrels that clinked softly, each filled to the brim with softened dragonglass shards harvested by riverfolk in secret caves. 2 figures crouched beside the barrels. A bald Valentine with wine-dark tattoos swirling over his skull, and a Lysine woman with eyelids painted argent. "The market has changed," the Lysine murmured, tilting a shard so moonlight sliced through its clarity. "Last month, every magus east of Karth would have slit his mother's throat for a handful of frozen fire. Now they say the shards lose their bite. Alchemists whisper of miracles gone stale." The Valentine spat into the river. "Miracle or not, the Citadel pays. Archmaester Marwyn wants every piece we find. He'll pay thrice the going rate." "And if Marwyn shares them with the Dragon Queen?" He shrugged, pushing the shard back into its barrel. "One fire eats another. Who cares which fire wins? Gold spends the same." Oars slapped water beyond the prow. The Lysine turned, blinking heavily lined lashes. Another poleboat slid from the reeds, silent save the dull scrape of hull on silt. Its pilot, tall, cloaked in gray, raised a hand in greeting. When the new boat moored alongside, the stranger stepped aboard with fluid grace. Moonlight brushed a pale, expressionless face. No, a mask of leather stretched tight, features smoothed like wet clay. The Valentine cursed and reached for the dagger at his belt, but the newcomer spoke in a voice without age. "A gift for a gift," the figure said, and laid a pouch of silver stags upon the deck. "The many-faced god pays his debts." The Lysine hesitated, We deal only in dragonglass, stranger. Then you will not refuse this. The masked one lifted a slender hand. Between thumb and forefinger lay a fragment of crystal shaped like a tear, black at its core. Carry this south. Deliver it to Archmaester Marwyn with the barrels. Tell him the world has swallowed its own night, but its hunger remains. Before either smuggler could answer, the stranger stepped to the river's edge and simply fell, vanishing without splash. The water swallowed the cloak, then smoothed as though nothing had disturbed its surface. A chill breeze slithered across the deck. Both smugglers shivered though the night remained mild. The Lysine wrapped the pouch of silver in her sash. "What was that?" she whispered. "Something old," her partner muttered, pushing away from the other boat, hands trembling on the pole. "And something new. A dragonstone." Daenerys found no rest. Ships clanged anchor chains all through the night, bringing her unsullied from Astapor, her Dothraki from the mainland encampment at Massey's Hook, and three-masted cogs from Pentos Heavy with mercenaries seeking the queen whose dragons had altered the seasons. Captain's logs piling in the painted tower reported storms forming beyond the stepstones, churning seas bright enough at night that sailors swore day never ended now. Some blamed the vanished Night King, certain that his death had unshackled forces older than Valyria itself. Others claimed sorcery flared wild, feeding on the vacancy left behind, and currents of raw power drifted like shoals of glowing fish in the deeps. Daenerys walked barefoot across the map room's carved volcanic floor, tracing the stone relief of Blackwater Bay with her toes. Tyrion stood at the window, leagues of dark sea stretched behind him, hands clasped behind back as if in prayer. "Tell me again," she demanded. Tyrion's gaze remained seaward. "I have twice. Tell me," she insisted, voice low. He exhaled. "Samwell Tarly's letters agree with ravens from Oldtown, from Winterfell, from Bravos. The dead are dead. Whatever made them walk has unraveled." Dany's eyes blazed. "And the dragonglass?" "Harmless," Tyrion said softly. "Or so the alchemists believe. Clear as dew, light as glass, warm as human skin if you press it long enough." His shoulders drooped. "We stock tons of it, and now it is trinket, not weapon." Daenerys stopped over Storm's End on the map. She thought of the children burned in Meereen when Drogon first took wing, of the charred bones left for her to bury. Balance, she thought. Fire for ice, ice for fire. What fills the space between? She knelt, splaying fingers across the relief of King's Landing until they fit between the miniature ramparts. "I will bring them justice," she said. "Not with glass forged for ghosts, but with living flame." Tyrion closed his eyes. He heard faint wing beats overhead, Drogon circling the tower, restless. Rhaegal and Viserion screeched replies beyond the walls. Their shadows flickered across red-lit casements like ravens 3 times their size. "Your Grace," he murmured. "The realm just tasted hope. Burn it now, and you may find ash harder to swallow than snow." Her jaw clenched. "Hope and fear are the same coin." Tyrion bowed his head. "Yes, the trick is persuading the world which side faces up." Daenerys rose. "Then I shall spin it myself." In the darkened rookery at Castle Black, Maester Wolkan bent over parchments cluttered with arcane numerals. He mapped temperatures against positions of the 3 moats, stars newly visible since the dead collapsed. They traced a triangle over the horizon each night, never before recorded by watchmaesters. Wolkan's quill darted, scratching frantic loops. A knock startled him. Dolorous Ed stepped inside, gray eyes deeper than ever. "Ravens from Deepwood Motte, Eastwatch, and the Bridge of Skulls," he said, stacking scrolls. "All report early thaws. Rivers breaking, ice fishing huts sunk." He cleared his throat. "And a rider from Hardhome claims the woods are singing." "Everything sings after silence," Wolkan murmured, sealing his letter to the Citadel. "Whether we like the tune is another thing." He dripped wax, pressed his square seal, then hesitated. The candle's flame lengthened, flickered green a heartbeat, then steadied. It crossed arms. "I don't suppose you'll explain that little trick." "I didn't do it," Wolken admitted, voice small. He reached for one of the clear dragonglass knives and held the blade near the candle. The edge caught the light, bending it until green shimmered like verdant ghosts along the surface. Light behaves strangely around this glass, he said, as if it remembers another color. Ed's brow furrowed, like memories trapped in stone. Perhaps. Wolken touched the dagger's hilt as if it might pulse. Perhaps the dead left more behind than bones. Outside, a raven cawed once, twice, then shrieked so loudly Ed winced. Wolken rose, peered out the narrow window at the rookery ledge. One raven, black as pitch save for a single white feather sprouting at its throat, stared back, head cocked. In its beak it held a fragment of mirror, cracked down the middle. Frost limned the edges where no frost should reach. Wolken whispered a prayer beneath his breath, neither to Seven nor Old nor any god with a name. Far to the bitter north, beyond the blackened pit where the weirwood without a face once stood, ice cracked with a cannon's report. A fissure coursed across a frozen lake, splitting its mirrored surface into jagged plates. Beneath each sheet, pale outlines writhed, drifting upward like smoke disgorged from drowned chimneys. They were bones. Elk, bear, direwolf, mammoth, all bleached ghost white, stirring in eddies of silted snow. The fissure widened, water gurgled. Up rose a cage of twisted root and slivine, grown in secret beneath the ice, older than any watcher. Within that cradle floated a sword the color of sorrow, a shard of midnight that bled blue from its core. It throbbed once, twice, as pulse returning to a severed limb, then stilled. A figure stepped onto the lake from the northern shore, bare feet pale as new-fallen snow. The woman's hair flowed silver white, her skin dappled where moonlight filtered through thin clouds. A child of the forest, though larger, taller than tales suggested. She moved with deliberate grace, as if water humbled itself to hold her. She sang in a tongue of rustling leaves, and the roots obeyed, lifting the sword. It hovered an instant before angling toward her outstretched palm. She closed slender fingers around the grip. Ice spider-webbed across her wrist, but she did not flinch. Her golden eyes reflected the sword's blue heart's blood. Then she spoke words that tasted of sap and marrow, and the sword's night core darkened until blue became violet. Violet became ember, ember became coal. The woman began southward, footfalls silent on air. Behind her the lake refroze, sealing bones once more in their cold tomb. Yet where she passed, no flake fell. No wind dared stir. The silence that followed was not the hush of absence, but the bated breath of something reborn. Dawn over Winterfell arrived soft and lavender. Sansa had ordered horns blown at first light, summoning every bannerman, free rider, and small folk elder who could sit upright. Jon donned a plain leather jerkin stitched with barely visible direwolf threadwork. He bound Longclaw at his hip and descended to the great hall. Inside, the hall murmured with tension. Glover men rubbed shoulders with Karstark women. Flint archers idled beside Barrowton millers. A dozen lords of middling repute sat high-backed as hatchlings waiting to be fed. At the dais stood Sansa, her red cloak now edged in grey wolf fur. To her right, Ser Davos. To her left, Brienne, visor raised but gauntlets on. Jon strode forward, Ghost pacing silent as a shadow behind him. The hum vanished as he mounted the steps. He turned to face the crowd. In their eyes he saw hope, fatigue, suspicion. Above them all hung the banners of Stark and Arryn and Mormont, limp in the suddenly still air. "My friends," Jon began, voice low but steady. "Winter's tale has ended, the one we knew. Another begins today, and we do not yet know its shape." A few heads tilted, others frowned. Jon inhaled. "The Night King is gone. The dead no longer march. But magic does not die, it moves." Samwell Tarly writes of absences, vacuums, forces rushing where ice once ruled. The maesters speak of new stars and old omens. We feel warmth in our bones where frost should linger. He paused, hand resting on Longclaw's pommel. "If we pretend spring has come without price, we invite a debt no harvest can pay." A rustle, Then Lord Manderley's booming baritone. "And what price would you have us pay, your grace?" John lifted his chin. "Vigilance. Unity. We cannot afford the squabbles that feasted on our fathers. We gather grain, forge alliances, mend roads. We send word to the Vale, to the Riverlands, even to Dragonstone. We invite them here to plan a peace that does not bleed in the cradle." Lady Lyanna Mormont stood on her bench. Dragonstone. Her small fist pounded the backrest. "The Dragon Queen wants the Iron Throne, not our council." John's gaze softened. "And she has dragons, Lady Lyanna. Fire has replaced ice as the power men fear. Better to speak with fire than to be burned by surprise." A low rumble of assent and dissent mingled. Sansa's clear voice cut through. "We will host envoys, not armies. And those who come will eat at our tables under guest right." She gave Lyanna a firm nod. No northern heart yields to fear, only preparation. The debate sparked anew, branching into questions of levy counts, smithing fuel, trade routes through rethawing rivers. John answered patiently, though his mind drifted to Bran's pouch, the mirror shard within, still warm against his chest. When at last the council adjourned, John retreated to the Godswood, ghosting between weirwood roots until he found Bran beneath the heart tree. "I've seen her," Bran said, eyes distant clouds. "A child grown tall, carrying sorrow's sword. She walks south on air." John knelt. "Who?" "One who was never meant to stand alone. A child of earth and frost, born to end a war, now freed of purpose." Bran blinked, pupils shrinking back. "When a watcher steps away, who watches then?" John offered the shard. Bran took it, placing it on the ground between their knees. It refracted the scarlet of the heart tree's leaves into shards of wine-red light. Bran touched 2 fingers to its surface. A faint note thrummed, so low John felt it in his ribs. "She seeks something?" Bran whispered, leaving his fingers upon the glass. "A counterweight." John's throat tightened. "To what?" Bran's answer was almost inaudible. "To us." The wind exhaled through red leaves overhead. Tree sap trickled from the carved face, like blood that could not freeze. On Dragonstone, Regal banked low over the beach, belly skimming wave tops until seawater hissed to steam in his shadow. Daenerys stood ankle-deep in surf, arms raised. Drogon landed behind her with a hurricane of wings. The Dragon Queen touched the black scales at his shoulder, feeling his heat seep into her marrow. "Fly," she whispered, "and remind the world it lives at my pleasure." 3 dragons shot skyward as one, tails lashing spray into mist that glittered rainbow. Ships in the harbor heaved. Men on deck stared skyward, hearts hammering. Some knelt. Tyrion watched from the seawall, wine cup trembling. Above him, dragonfire burst against clouds, 3 rings of flame interlocking in a burning sigil no herald could ever draw. He drained the cup, tasting ashes instead of Dornish red. The poleboat's cargo reached Old Town just as dawn lit the Hightower's glass crown. Archmaester Marwyn met the smugglers in a candlelit vault lined with leering gargoyles carved from oily jet. He waved off questions and paid double, loading the barrels onto a wheeled platform drawn by 6 sweating boys. At the center of the cart lay the tear-shaped crystal. That night Marwyn locked himself in the Eclipse Tower, rolled back the copper roof, and aligned his triple-lens telescope with the 3 new stars. He set the tear directly beneath the eyepiece, so starlight passed through it before striking the lens. The moment alignment was perfect, Marwyn's breath left his lungs with a grunt. He felt it pulled down the telescope like smoke drawn into a furnace. The stars, the motes, expanded until they filled his vision. 3 burning spheres threaded by filaments of living fire. Between them spun a coin, its 2 faces flipping faster than sight, until both surfaces blurred into one. A single human face carved from night, weeping molten light. Marwyn tried to look away. Unseen fingers held his jaw. He heard rustling beyond the edge of hearing, leaves whispering in languages without consonant or vowel. When at last he tore free, he stumbled, slamming shoulder into a bookshelf so hard volumes cascaded to the floor. The tear crystal glowed faintly violet. Marwyn's pulse roared between ears. He seized quill and parchment, scrawling notes he barely comprehended, lines of old tongue and Lycene runes and symbols he'd seen only in the black pages of sickly ass-high scrolls. At the top he wrote, "Vacuum equals throne." Beneath, "Balance breeds hunger." And at the bottom, "Watch the mirrors." His candle guttered. In the dark, faint music rose from the crystal. Distant, keening, the edge of a wail. Marwyn understood then it was not singing. It was shaking the way a vessel shivers before it cracks. Night settled over Winterfell again, heavier than before, carrying a hush that thickened every corridor. Jon could not sleep. He walked the ramparts until moon-netted cloud cover smothered the stars. Ghost padded after him, pausing at intervals to sniff the air, hackles twitching. Halfway along the eastern wall, Jon stopped. Below, outside the gatehouse, a lone rider approached along the ribbon of Kingsroad. No banner, no torch. The figure's cloak fluttered pale as cobweb. Jon's hand fell to Longclaw. The rider halted before the closed portcullis and raised an arm, palm forward, as if to brace against invisible wind. A gust swept the yard. Snow rose in spirals, hissing against stone. Torches lining the walls flared green, then blue, then steadied. Jon's breath misted in front of him, swirling with each heartbeat. Ghost growled, teeth bared. Below, the rider lowered their hood. Moonlight caught hair white-silver, skin winter-pale, eyes golden as harvest. In her left hand she held a sword shaped from night, edges smoldering violet. She spoke, voice carrying strangely, too soft to be called aloud, yet every man on the wall heard it. "I come for balance," she said. "Open your gate, Wolf King, and weigh your worth." Jon's pulse slammed. Around him crossbows clicked, axes lifted. He held up a hand. "Stand ready," he whispered. Then he shouted down, "Who are you?" The woman's gaze never left him. "A child of many fathers, a daughter of broken packs. I held the leash of winter once. I release it now." She planted the sword tip in snow. "I seek the coin that spins between flame and frost." Jon's throat ached. He drew Longclaw and raised it high, moonlight glancing along its Valerian sheen. "You'll find no coins here." The woman tilted her head. "Every life is a coin." She indicated the wolf at his side. "Yours spins loud." She paused, as if hearing something distant. "And hers." She glanced beyond Jon, toward the keep, toward Sansa's window glowing faint beneath drawn drapes. Jon felt coldness radiate from the shard in his pouch. "Tell me," he demanded, forcing strength into his voice. "What balance do you seek? Death for death, silence for song, a face for every face stolen." The woman stepped back, sword trailing arcs of violet sparks. "The world asks, and I answer." Jon's lungs seized. He thought of the faceless coin, of the girl who became no one, of debts paid. Sansa's words echoed, "Be ready before something fills the hole." He raised Longclaw two-handed. "Then face me," he said. "I will answer in kind." A smile touched her lips, sad, almost tender. "Not yet." She lifted her free hand and blew across the palm. Snow billowed upward, blotting her shape. When it settled, she was gone. Jon's shouts sent men scrambling to levers. The portcullis groaned open. They rode into the yard beyond, but found only swirling drifts, sword-shaped furrow in the snow where violet sparks still faded. Ghost sniffed, whined, then backed away. Jon pressed a fist against the pouch holding Bran's mirror shard. Pulsed once, faintly warm. Balance, he thought. The word tasted of ash and iron and grief. Behind him, a bell tolled. One clang, then another, alarm trembling through stone. Fires kindled across rooftops. Winterfell woke to a new night, and its shadows twisted like coins flipped in candlelight, waiting to land. Atop the wall, Maester Wolkan finished binding a raven to the mirror fragment. The bird beat frantic wings as if the weight of its cargo tugged strange at its flight. He whispered, "Fly swift," and released it. The raven streaked into the night, black against black, toward Winterfell's burning beacons. As the bird vanished beyond the ring wall, Wolken felt the air ripple, as though some vast lung exhaled northward, across forests, across lakes cracked open like eggshells. The ripple passed through him, leaving nothing but silence. "Balance," he muttered, clutching the rampart for support. Far below, bonfires flickered, their flames green a moment and then ordinary again. He wondered if they had ever been green at all. In Bravos, the scales in the sanctuary shifted. The crystal coin slid 2 hairs' breadth downward. No hand touched it. Novices stilled, hearing a chime with no bell. Across the narrow sea, on old volcanic stone, Daenerys Targaryen turned her gaze westward as if scenting a storm. Above the Dothraki Sea, horses stamped and shrieked beneath a cloudless sky. In the Eyrie, snow shook from the high balconies in a muted avalanche, painting Littlefinger's boots white as chalk. In the God's Wood of Winterfell, Bran Stark opened eyes milky with sight and whispered one word to the trees. Soon, branches bowed, scattering flakes across red leaves that would never again feel the Night King's gaze, but might yet learn a new kind of cold. Snow muffled every sound as Jon descended the winding stair from the ramparts to the yard. The bells had ceased, but torchfire still guttered along the walls in uneasy gusts, throwing fox-tailed shadows that leapt over stone and vanished again. He crossed the bailey beneath the looming dark of the broken king's tower, Ghost trotting at his heel, each pawprint already filling with frost. The air carried a tremble, as if the very night were wound too tight upon its own spool. Near the main gate, archers peered through the murder holes while blacksmiths doused forge embers and armed the sentries. Ser Davos hurried toward Jon, cloak streaming behind him like a tattered sail. He leaned close to keep his voice low. Boy on the East Watch saw her vanish like breath on glass. No tracks leading away, no campfires on the road for miles. Jon's jaw tightened. Have the garrisons from the Dreadfort and Carhold reached us? On the road, Davos answered. A day, maybe 2. Lord Manderly's spearmen arrived at dusk, thick as cod in a barrel, but half drunk on sweet wine. Jon looked back at the portcullis. The brief violet glow where the stranger's sword had cut the snow was gone, yet he felt its after-image inside his eyes. Double the watches, he said. Post ravens to every bannerman. No lone riders outside gate or wall, and fetch Bran to the hall. Davos dipped his head and strode into the swirl of torchlight. Bran arrived borne on a wicker litter carried by 4 stable lads. They set him before the hearth in Winterfell's great hall, its stone belly roaring alive with peat smoke and pine. Stark soldiers crowded the perimeter, helms under arms, mail flashing like fish scales. Sansa stood beside the high table with parchment ready, cool poised, eyes moving between Bran and Jon as though to stitch their silences together. Jon knelt at Bran's side. Who is she? Bran's white pupils flicked to Jon's face. A maple leaf tremor played across his lips. Leaf, he murmured. Or what Leaf might have become had she lingered 4,000 years and forgotten every word of men. His fingers brushed the mirror shard in Jon's pouch. Light danced inside the glass, swirling scarlet like embers in strong wind. She carries the sword of mourning, frostfire tempered in children's blood. We gave it to the first of the Night's Kings. Now it has no master. Torches cracked, sending a powdery hiss through the rafters. Sansa's quill hovered. She said she wants balance, she prompted. Balance, Bran repeated, eyes distant. An equation of lives. She measures what was taken from the world and seeks equal weight. His hands lay slack upon his lap, knuckles pale as milk glass. We took her winter. She will claim our spring. A murmur rose, fear thick as chimney soot. Jon straightened, voice resting upon the muttering like steel upon anvil. Then we will not yield it. Not our people, not our home. Bran did not smile. Winterfell is not her quarry. Jon's pulse pounded. The hall listened so intently the banners seemed to lean closer. Then what is? Bran's gaze drifted toward the ceiling, toward far unseen skies. Fire, he answered, threefold and winged. Sansa's parchment rustled. The quill snapped between her fingers. Silence swallowed the room. Dragon shadow rippled over the narrow sea at dawn. Regal sliced the brightening sky, vapor streaming from open jaws. Drogon led, wings scooping troughs in the clouds, tail cleaving contrails that shimmered orange where sunrise caught them. Viserion wheeled lower, scattering seabirds in his wake. Below, Daenerys rode Drogon's neck ridge, knuckles white around the saddle grips, hair whipping silver ribbons behind her. Salt air stung her lips. Dragonstone faded astern. Ahead, the faint smudge of Massey's hook curved like a beckoning finger. She felt the dragon's hearts throbbing through her thighs. 3 great furnaces stoked by winds older than empires. Yet inside her own breast a smaller furnace burned, fueled by tidings of an enemy undone. The realm glowed with newborn hope, and hope might bend more easily than fear. Tyrion rode at her right on Regal's back, his cloak belled by slipstream, eyes narrowed against the sting of height. Davos's earlier letter nestled beneath his doublet, its wax cracked, the words etched upon his mind like Valyrian script in molten iron. Winterfell requests parley. Fire must answer frost, lest all be consumed in kind. Regal banked west. Tyrion guided with careful taps of heel and rein. He had practiced with the Dragon Master's whistle for half a moon, yet each shift in Regal's muscle still jolted terror through him. The beasts had chosen to obey for now. Drogon shrieked once, a horn note shattering the hush of dawn. 3 shadows converged, turning north by east, and the sun behind them cast a single vast silhouette upon the shining sea. A triskelion of wings, beating toward Winterfell. In the Vale, high atop the Ares mountain spire, Lord Yohn Royce strode into the moon door chamber with mailed feet ringing on marble. Littlefinger waited by the narrow arch, the yawning drop behind him misty white. "Winterfell summons," Royce said, brandishing the raven's letter. "All lords sworn to the North's wheel." Littlefinger's eyebrow climbed. An invitation wrapped in caution. "One wonders why they seek our counsel after keeping us at arm's length." "They mend alliances," Royce answered. "If dragons fly to the wolf's banquet, the falcon must perch nearby." Baelish's smile curved like a sickle. "Dragons burn what they perch on." The Vale kept its crags unscathed for centuries by choosing its storms. He stepped closer, voice velvet. "Let me ride to Winterfell in the young lord's stead. My counsel, my coin, my army at your command while you safeguard sweet Robin here." Royce studied him, gray beard bristling. "You would leave the boy lord behind, protected only by maids and maesters, while you chase Dragonflame?" Littlefinger's laugh was soft. "Robin will be safer than all of us with these walls and the Knights of the Vale, and I shall return with new bonds that lift the Vale higher than any eyrie." His hand brushed the stone casement. "One must leap to teach wings their worth." Royce grunted, half turning. Snow swirled through the open moon door behind Baelish, carried on updrafts that howled from the valley floor. "Mind your leap, Lord Baelish. The wind is hungry." But Littlefinger's eyes glittered like mica. "Oh, sire," he whispered, "I feed the wind." Marwyn's eclipse tower smelled of scorched vellum and nervous sweat. Candles guttered in brass cages, their flames green-tipped one moment, purple the next. The Archmaester's raven-black cloak clung damp to his shoulders as he leaned over a marble basin of oily water. The tear crystal floated upon the surface, spinning in lazy circles, its core pulsing violet. Pate, the pig boy turned novice, held a ledger open, quill poised. "The crystal hummed again at first moonrise," he reported, voice quavering. Vibration lasted 7 counts of the breath and stopped. Marwyn's eyes, rimmed red from sleepless nights, never left the basin. Each hum stronger and shorter between. He drummed parchment-stained fingers on the rim. "When resonance matches the tone of the world, the vessel will break." "Break," Pate swallowed. "Archmaester, perhaps we should secure it deeper, or cast it into Blackwater Bay." Marwyn's laugh came out rough. "A cracked bell does not lose its ring when thrown away. It carries the sound to new ears." He gripped Pate's wrist, smearing ink. Fetch every lens you can find. We will watch the shatter. Watch! The moment creation sighs, boy. Few men witness such tides and live. Hate's face blanched whiter than September dust. And live, he echoed faintly. Marwyn released him. If we die, the story remains. No knowledge preserved is truly lost, only misplaced. He smiled like a broken lantern. Hurry! Night at Winterfell thickened with cloud. Jon stood once more on the rampart, staring into black-on-black horizon. He imagined the silver-haired woman approaching again, this time not vanishing. What would he bargain? What weight equaled millennia of night? Footsteps approached. Brienne, cloak trailing snow. She carried a bundle swaddled in linen. Oathkeeper. Steel may not answer sorcery, she said, but it steadies the hand. Jon took the long sword, feeling its warmth. If steel fails, what then? Then the hand must hold. Brienne gazed over the wall. A knight's oath is to stand while hope stands, and after. Jon's laughter felt brittle. Hope, a thin thing tonight. Hope is never thin, Brienne replied quietly. Only distant. He looked down at Oathkeeper's crimson ripples. Valyrian steel, once sister blade to ice. Could ancient magic answer older? He had no surety, only the weight in his grip. From the south came a dull boom, thunder without lightning. Jon's head snapped up. A second boom followed, closer. He squinted, breath-catching. No storm clouds stalked the foothills, yet the rumble deepened. A drumbeat traveling upon ground, not sky. Horses? No. Ghost growled low, fur bristling. Then a horn call drifted far, stretched thin against snow-laden wind. 3 notes descending like falling stars. Jon's chest clenched. He'd last heard that horn outside Meereen, where Dothraki Khalasars announced their charge. Another sound answered, a roar, distant but immense, echoing across foothills. Dragonfire. Jon spun to the courtyard below. Signal tower, he shouted. Light the high beacons. Men scrambled, flinging oil into lantern baskets. Flames whooshed up the beacon poles along the inner curtain. The southern tower ignited second, then the ridge torches, one after another, blazing a line of gold. Jon dashed down stair after stair, Brienne pacing him. In the yard he met Ser Davos, red in the face. Dragons, Jon said. Davos nodded grimly. And riders. Snow flurried overhead. Thunder grew louder, part roar, part rush of colossal wings. Jon's heart hammered, yet he forced calm into his limbs as they strode to the gate room. The portcullis lifted. Beyond, the long King's Road lay silver-white under night's gloom. Suddenly the darkness tore open with orange brilliance. Drogon descending, spouting a pillar of flame to soften the frozen plain, claws sending shards of ice spinning. Behind him Regal flapped to a hover, wings beating gusts that hurled snow like torn silk. Viserion alighted last, tail slashing drifts into froth. Daenerys slid down Drogon's flank, boots crunching onto steaming slush. Tyrion dismounted Regal less gracefully, landing in a sprawl and rising with a groan. 3 unsullied standard-bearers hurried forward, black spears glinting. Jon stepped beyond the threshold, Oathkeeper strapped across his back, hands raised empty. The heat radiating from Drogon licked his cheeks, melting snowflakes mid-fall. Daenerys studied him across the churned ground. Her hair clung damp to her brow. Her eyes burned with some fierce decision. The North called, she said, voice carrying above crackling ice. I have come. Jon inclined his head. You're welcome beneath our roof. She smiled, not kindly. Then why do I feel the chill? Jon glanced at the dragons. Smoke puffed from Drogon's nostrils. Because winter is hard to forget, even when it ends. Tyrion stepped forward, dusting snow off his sleeves. Shall we speak where walls break the wind? My ears frost faster than yours. Jon motioned. This way. Torches guided the small party inside. Boiling vats of pitch kept Dragonfire from scorching timbers as stable hands led the beasts to the outer yard, laying steaming haunches of goat. Snow hissed where fire dripped from fangs. Villagers cowered behind staircase arches, whispering. In the council chamber Sansa waited, Bran at her side, Ser Davos and Brienne flanking. Jon and Daenerys took seats opposite, firelight playing over their faces. Tyrion climbed a cushioned stool, working warmth back into crooked fingers. Jon began, "We have no quarrel, your grace. The dead are gone, and our swords need not cross." Daenerys inclined her head. "The dead, perhaps, but old grudges linger. Cersei Lannister holds the Iron Throne I have claimed by birthright. The realm's duty is to recognize its true queen." Sansa's tone cut through the heat. "The realm's duty is to survive. Queens and crowns mean little if the soil sours and rivers burn." "I do not seek to burn rivers," Dany said. "Only to clear rot." Her gaze flicked to Bran. Yet rot spreads. Bran's vacant stare never wavered. "Cersei dreams of wildfire already." The words dropped like stones. Tyrion's face drained. "You've seen this." Bran's voice rasped. Walls collapsing, bells screaming, shadows of children burned on tower stones. He paused. A queen at the center of the flame. An intake of breath. Daenerys' shoulders stiffened. "Which queen?" Bran blinked slowly. "Which side of the coin will face the sky when it falls? That choice remains." Silence stretched. Davos coughed. "Perhaps we speak of the other matter." Jon nodded, recounting the silver-haired stranger, Bran's warnings, Marwyn's letters. Tyrion's brow wrinkled deeper with each word. When Jon finished, Daenerys rose, pacing like a caged cat. "You tell me ice is gone, but something colder walks," she said. "You speak of swords forged from grieving and coins that tilt the world. Yet you ask alliance while my dragons wait outside your gate." Jon stood too. "We ask alliance because something colder walks. Those dragons may tip the scale, but which way? The swordbearer hunts imbalance. If she deems dragonfire too heavy, where will her blade fall?" Daenerys' face hardened. "On any who threaten the innocent." Bran stirred. In her eyes, innocence ended when the first men broke bread with gods not their own. Tyrion massaged his temples. "We trade riddles while storms gather." Sansa pointed to the map spread on the table. Rivers, castles, burning markers where Bran had drawn visions. Old Town's trembling star spire, the airy snow avalanching. King's Landing ringed by wildfire sigils. Threats on every border. "We cannot meet them alone." Daenerys exhaled, tension bleeding from shoulders. "What do you propose?" Jon answered, "A treaty sealed in goodwill. Your forces winter here. We share grain, you share fire. When spring steadies, we march south together, dragons and north, ending Cersei's reign, forging new law that binds faith and blood alike." Daenerys studied him. "And the north bends the knee?" Jon's breath clouded the torchlight. "The knee bends to trust. Earn it here, earn it now." Bran whispered. "The coin slows." Daenerys opened her palm. Inside lay a dull crystal shard, gift from Missandei. Its core pulsed faintly purple, matching the shard Bran held. The stones seemed to tremble in tandem across the table. Tyrion stared, wide-eyed. Two halves of the same tear. Bran tilted his head. The glass in his pouch pulsed. When shards reunite, the bell rings. Jon and Daenerys exchanged glances heavy as millstones. Beyond the shivering sea, the masked smuggler guided a horse through the black pines near the ruins of Braavos' southern aqueduct. At a moonlit glade he knelt, uncovering a shallow grave. Inside lay a man's face, peeling, gray, empty of life. The smuggler removed the mask, revealing the countenance of the faceless man Jaqen Hagar, Thug. Younger, eyes dark pools. He placed the corpse face gently into the soil, pressing dirt over it as one might tuck a child beneath quilts. He murmured in a language without vowels. The pines sighed inward. Beneath his palms the earth shivered, swallowing the face entirely. Jaqen straightened, staring at his pristine hands as though uncertain if they belonged to him. From the shadows drifted the kindly man, cowl of bone dust over smooth visage. "A face for a face," he intoned. "But the weight is uneven." Jacquin lowered his gaze. "The world adds coin upon coin. No scale stands forever." The kindly man lifted a strip of dark cloth, draped it across Jacquin's forearms. "Find the daughter of sorrow. When the last tear falls, return." Jacquin's mouth curved into something like sorrow. "And if there is no return? Then the coin leaves the hand," the elder replied. "And the game seeks new players." Moonlight through branches etched silver teeth across earth as Jacquin melted into forest. High over the neck, Lady Lyanna Mormont led a column of bear-cloaked warriors along the King's Road, her pony's breath steaming like forged smoke. Scouts returned, reporting fires on the horizon, dragon fire, unmistakable. The girl lord clenched her jaw. "Onward," she ordered. "If dragons visit Winterfell, the bears break bread with them or bleed fighting." Her uncle Jorel chuckled. "Dragons eat goats, not bears, girl." Lyanna's glare burned hotter than any flame. "Then we will teach them the taste of iron." Frost-slick wind tore past, carrying the fragrance of pine and, faint beneath, something stranger. A metallic tang, like stones struck by lightning. Lyanna sniffed, frowning. Ahead, the forest opened to a frozen tarn. Ice cracked, echoing across silent trunks like a warning drum. Lyanna's pony balked. Something moved upon the lake, pale, gliding just beneath the ice. Warriors readied spears. The shape resolved into a skeletal elk drifting belly up, antlers laced with hoarfrost. It slid toward shore as though tugged by currents none could see. Jorel muttered a prayer. The elk struck the bank and stopped, eyes vacant holes. Where it touched dirt, frost spread, a gray lace suffocating grass. Lyanna dismounted, steps crunching. She pressed a gauntlet to the carcass's hide. It shattered under her palm, collapsing into a fine white powder that blew away on wind. No rot, no blood, only empty space in elk shape. Lyanna backed up slowly. "Ride hard," she ordered. "Warn Winterfell. The dead changed their masks, not their hunger." In Old Town, the tear crystal rang. A clear, piercing chime erupted through the eclipsed tower, audible across every spire. Glass shattered in shopfronts along Honeywine Quay. Cats fled shrieking. Novice maesters dropped scrolls and clamped hands to ears. Marwyn threw himself at the basin, but the orb now hovered above the water, spinning so fast its edges blurred into a disk. Purple light radiated, bleaching color from the stone walls. Cracks spiderwebbed up the tower. Marwyn shouted for Pate, voice lost in the vibration. Books fell like leaves in high wind. With a final resonant bang, the crystal imploded. No fragments, no dust, only a breath of violet mist that dissipated as swiftly as it formed. Silence followed, terrible in its finality. Marwyn staggered to his feet. Where the basin had been stood a perfect circle of melted marble, edges still glowing. In its center, nothing. He knelt, touching the vacant void, fingertips brushing bare air. A chill stabbed his joints. Knowledge fled his mind like water from a cracked jar. He groped for a quill, but words evaporated. He could not recall the runes he had etched minutes before. His howl echoed the tower, sounding more beast than man. Winterfell's yard swarmed with unsullied and stark guards mixing like oil and snowmelt. Dragonglass spears leaned beside weirwood-hafted axes. Within the gods Woodbrand sat alone before the heart tree, shards of violet glass cradled in his lap. He hummed softly, fragmentary, childlike. Snow feathers settled on his lids. He blinked them away but sang on. Sansa approached, cloak whispering. She knelt. "Is it done?" she asked. Bran tilted the shard. One tear fell. 2 remain. Sansa's heart thudded. "And when the last?" "The coin stops." Bran's eyes lifted, focusing on something unseen. "And the world decides which face it shows." Wind sighed through red leaves. Somewhere overhead, a raven croaked thrice and fell silent. Far south, in the black cellars beneath the Red Keep, Queen Cersei Lannister paced along dusty casks of wildfire. She ran manicured fingers over embossed lids, lips curving. Qyburn followed like a skeletal shadow, candle clutched tight. "How many?" she asked. "More than enough," he breathed. "And barrels still." Cersei waved him silent. She glanced up, hearing bells distantly toll, imagining crowds thronging the capital, cheering her name. The future belonged to those who burned bright enough to blind the world. She closed her eyes, smelling acrid resin. Somewhere far away, a crystal broke. She felt no tremor. Visions of green fire danced, devouring armies, dragons, wolves alike. She smiled. "The realm has forgotten fear," she said. "We shall remind them." Dusk bled across Winterfell, violet licking edges of clouds. On the outer yard, Daenerys stood before Drogon, stroking the warm scales beneath his throat. Across the paddock, Jon trained with Brienne, Oathkeeper ringing against Longclaw as sparks flew.
Unsolid vetchet impassive, stark spermen exchanget murmurs.
Sansa oversaw grain wagons rolling through gatehouses, tallying stores against mouths to feed. Above them, Bran's ravens wheeled, a whirling inkblot against dying light. They formed spirals, concentric, then burst outward like flecks of obsidian from a hammer strike. One bird slanted east, then north, then shot away west, faster than wind. Bran, eyes blank, whispered into fading air. The second tier falls. In the Vale, Littlefinger's palanquin crested the high road when the air rang like shattered crystal. Horses screamed, rearing. Snow cliffs avalanched, blocking the pass. In Old Town, Marwyn crouched in a melted tower, blank scroll in hand, tears cutting rivulets through soot on cheeks. At Dragonstone, Missandei felt the crystal shard in her pocket fracture, heat blistering her skin. She gasped, pulling it free. Only sand trickled through her fingers. In Bravos, the faceless coin slid again on the scales, one hairbreadth heavier. The hollow of the House of Black and White echoed with unseen footsteps, though no novice moved. And in the haunted north, beneath rags of dying aurora, the silver-haired woman walked across the sky as though it were quiet water. The morning sword drank starlight. At her back followed shapes of bone and air, elk without flesh, wolves without song, bears sculpted of moonlit frost. She did not look upon them. Ahead, on a hill crowned by a ring fort older than age, she halted. She lifted the blade. Violet light spilled, etching the ruined stones into silhouette. She spoke, voice a sigh that kissed every campfire from Skagos to salt pans. "One more face." She raised her free hand, and with it rose a coin the size of a man's shield. Spinning, flashing wolf and crown and wolf, faster than eye could track. She released it. The coin hung upon nothing, trembling as though the whole sky were a scale seeking balance. The morning sword pointed southward, toward Winterfell. Snow began to fall. Not white, but the pale blue of dawn, flakes like the first breath of spring seeking purchase on the corpse of winter. Jon stood at the Godswood Gate, watching those strange flakes melt upon his gloves before they touched ground. He felt Bran's gaze, or some deeper gaze, settle on his back. He spoke without turning. "How long do we have?" Bran answered from the shadow of roots, voice thin as reed. "Until the third tear, until the coin rests." Jon drew a slow breath, tasting iron. "Then we meet her here, on ground we choose." Branches rustled, though the wind lay still. Bran's words drifted like falling leaves, soft and certain. "On ground the world chooses, not we." Ghost appeared, eyes glowing in the dusk, muzzle dusted with blue snow. Jon placed his hand between those ears, feeling steady heartbeat meet trembling pulse. In that hush between heartbeats, he saw a coin spin, heard a bell ready its breath, and knew the evening's calm was only the hush before the scale's final tilt. Nights in the north had always possessed a fathomless depth, a darkness that seemed carved from solid stone and laid atop the world like a slab. But on this night, the dark felt porous, alive with the subtle shifting of invisible weights, as though unseen hands adjusted a set of balances somewhere beyond mortal sight. Wind purling across Winterfell's towers carried distant scents that never belonged together. Pine smoke and brine, fresh-turned earth and faint cinders, salt tear and cold iron. Anything might drift out of that mingled breath of seasons. A lover's whisper or a god's last sigh, and nothing felt wholly impossible. Jon Snow tasted all of it on the back of his tongue as he strode through the castle's inner ward beside Daenerys Targaryen. Ghost padded ahead, pale fur-limbed by torch flare, while Drogon crouched at the far end of the yard like a living hill, talons kneading churned slush. Sparks trickled from his jaws with every breath. Each ember hissed as it struck the blue-tinged snow that had begun falling since the silver-haired stranger's visitation. The flakes drifted out of cloudless air, luminous as dawnlight even in deepest night, and they melted slower than ordinary snow, as if reluctant to surrender the chill that birthed them. Unsullied stood sentry in perfect stillness just inside the eastern arch. Stark guards ringed the yard, not to hem the newcomers in, but to shoulder a duty their grandfathers would have called sacred, the guarding of guests beneath Winterfell's roof, guest right or no. There could be no misstep to tilt the coin further. Jon overtook Ghost, boots crunching in a rhythm tuned to quiet dread. He slowed at the sight of Bran Stark gliding across the courtyard in his wicker chair, pushed by Podrick Payne. Sansa walked at Bran's flank, red cloak billowing above snow that refused to decide whether it belonged to frost or dawn. Daenerys halted, gaze locked upon Bran as if she read in him some inscription only Dragonflame could illuminate. When Podrick stopped, Bran's pale eyes fixed upon the falling blue snowflakes. A single flake settled on his lashes and endured there without melting. He blinked, and the flake slid intact down his cheek. Daenerys spoke first. "You hold 2 shards," she said without preface. Her hand rose, ungloved, displaying the sanded smooth emptiness where her half-crystal used to be.
Mine dissolvet.
Yours persists. Bran's fingers tightened around the violet fragment in his lap. Yours returned to its source, he murmured. Mine waits for the source to come. Tyrion drew nearer, brow furrowed. If 2 tears have fallen, Archmaester Marwyn should confirm. But our ravens bring no answer, no reply since the tremor. He exhaled white mist. Old Town may be listening for a greater sound. Old Town will answer when it can, Bran said. Marwyn sees more than most men dare admit. Jon crouched so his eyes were level with Bran's. This stranger leaf or whatever shade she's become. Why here? Why now? Because the North remembers, Bran whispered. It remembers promises forged in children's blood and broken beneath weirwood boughs. She believes dragons will shatter balance once more. So she hunts dragons or the hearts that command them. Bran's gaze drifted to Daenerys, then slid toward Jon. Or both. Sansa's breath hissed. The blue snow at her feet glowed faintly, reflecting firelight. Then we must show her she is wrong. No, Bran's voice clanged despite its softness. You must show her you are willing to be wrong and still stand. Balance is not surrender, it is stance. A sword upon its point spins until every wobble dies. In stillness, it chooses a direction. Daenerys lifted her chin. I did not come north to be weighed like coin. Snowflakes vanished in the heat that haloed her. I came to forge peace and claim right. And you shall, Bran allowed. But peace is not a single throne. It is every hearthfire lit with no fear of ice or wildfire or dragon shadow. Jon straightened. Then how do we prove our coin is worth her mercy? Bran inhaled. With a pilgrimage, not of banners and steel, but of the hearts she deems heavy. Where? Jon asked. To the eye in the Weald, Bran replied. In the Greenlands where children danced with giants. There lies the 3rd tier. It will fall whether you journey or hide, yet travel shapes the fall. Arya's voice slipped from darkness. She had appeared near the archway, hood casting her face in half-shadow. That's half the world away. Half the world, Bran echoed. Yet nearer than some truths. Planning began before the bells could ring again. Within the strategy hall, the map board bore new tokens. Not armies advancing, but small carven stones representing hearts pledged to the passage south. Arya lifted a pale carved wolf to the Weald's coastline, sliding it beside a slender dragon cut from obsidian. The carved coin Jon had pocketed earlier now lay at the board's center, edges worn, both faces blank. Neither crown nor wolf. It caught the hearth glow and reflected nothing. Davos tapped the route lines. Winterfell to the neck, track the King's Road to Moat Cailin, then strike through the swamps by the causeway. Beyond, we follow the greenways, old First Men paths, through the riverlands into the Kingswood and down to the Weald. Hard riding if snows stay calm, harder still if spring falters. Tyrion measured distance with his thumb and forefinger. Roads south of the Trident suffer bandits loyal to no crown. Cersei's gold moves among them. He looked to Jon. If we take dragons aloft, we invite wildfire arrows. If we march under banners, we invite blades. Arya shrugged one shoulder. We travel in shadows. Small party. She fingered her needle's hilt. Shadows slip beneath blades. Sansa frowned. A mission of parley is poorly served by shadows. Appear furtive and you confirm every fear. Daenerys placed her palm atop the blank coin. I will not cower under suspicion. One dragon, not three, shall shadow us, and only upon necessity. She met Jon's eyes. I trust Regal at your side if danger soars. Jon nodded. The thought of leaving Drogon roost in the yard, heart of Winterfell's trepidation, seemed wise, but the risk remained. What if Leaf's blade found the keep while they rode? He said nothing, only turned the coin until warm metal kissed his calloused fingertips. Bran's chair wheeled in. Fear travels quicker than any horse, he said. But hope moves only with feet that choose the way. Fewer blades mean lighter hearts. Daenerys looked to Grey Worm. The commander inclined his helm. 8 unsullied, silent, sworn, moving as ghosts, he proposed. Tyrion smirked. Ghosts in gray cloaks might suffice. He tapped the riverlands. I will accompany. Diplomacy demands a tongue as sharp as needle and twice as silver. And Bran? Jon asked. Bran shut his eyes, and for an instant his face seemed older and younger than a lifetime. My place is here, he said. The roots are deep. Someone must watch which winds bend them. His knuckles whitened on the wheel's rim. But you will not ride without guidance. He drew from beneath his furs a thin branch of weirwood bark, carved to a whistle. The hole at its core glimmered green, though no light passed through. He offered it to Jon. Blow when darkness thickens beyond sight. I will see what your eyes cannot. Jon accepted the whistle. The wood felt warm, pull steady. Then it is set, he said. He slid the coin into the hollow of the map's riverbed. We ride at dawn. Hours later, under a moon stolen by low clouds, Jon stood alone in the Godswood. The blue dawn snow lay thicker here, refusing to melt even against black earth. It blanketed the roots with a pale glow, making crimson leaves appear as tongues of fire licking a bed of ash. Ghost sniffed the base of the heart tree, then padded aside to watch. Jon knelt. He sought words for old gods who seldom answered. Tell me this road is right, he whispered. Tell me we do not trade one night for another. The cold seeped up his knees. Wind stirred branches. Through the heart tree's carved face a bead of sap welled, thick as blood, and trickled down the trunk toward Jon's clasped hands. He cupped the droplet on his thumb. Warmth bloomed, startling. He brought it to his lips, tasting copper and resin and something wild, a scent like leaf rot and sunlit meadows both. His breath caught. A vision flickered. Arya dancing among wolf shadows, Sansa in a hall of lilies, Bran standing, not sitting, on a field of violet frost. His heart thundered. The droplet chilled, and the vision faded, leaving him kneeling before silent bark again. Yet in the hush he felt a weight lift, not removed, but shifted so his shoulders no longer bore it alone. He rose and found Daenerys watching from beyond the mossstone arch. Snow clung to her lashes, ghostly in torch glow. Are you ready? She asked. No, Jon said honestly, but dawn comes whether we ready or not. She placed a hand on his chest, above his mail. I once feared dawn. In Meereen, every sunrise meant more masters to fight. Her fingers curled lightly into the links. But dawn is only another chance, not a verdict. Jon placed his palm over hers. The whistle Bran had given him lay between their wrists, cold wood warming. Then we'll make use of the chance. She nodded, turning to leave, but paused. If the sword of morning strikes dragons, Jon's fingers tightened. It will strike me first. I will not allow that, she said quietly. Then we stand between, each for the other. He let her hand go, yet the warmth lingered, thrumming like distant wings. Dawn rose pale gray, smudged by low-lying frost fog. The party assembled at Winterfell's main gate while ravens wheeled overhead, their wings sheened by strange blue ice. 8 unsullied in thick wool mantles flanked a wedge of Stark riders led by Ser Davos. Arya mounted a wiry gray mare. Needle was hidden beneath deerskin wraps, but her posture told every swordsman where the blade dwelt. Tyrion sat a stocky gelding, cheeks ruddy in the pre-dawn chill, quills and parchments stowed in saddle pouches. Grey Worm rode head of the Unsullied, spear reversed across his lap as symbol of truce. Daenerys approached on a silver palfrey, her dragonhide cloak cinched with a twisted steel brooch. Above, Regal circled once, then glided east toward a low summit half a league distant, settling upon the ridge to watch. Drogon remained coiled near the granary with guards at a respectful distance, a black mountain wreathed by steam. Sansa embraced Jon briefly, whispered counsel about grain allotments, politics, and the stubborn hearts of northern lords. She clasped Daenerys' forearm as well, meeting the queen's violet eyes with cool iron. "Bring him back," she said. Daenerys angled her head. "I intend all Starks returned, my lady." Sansa accepted that with a single nod, turned to Bran. He lifted a hand in farewell, and the wind through leaves sounded almost like a tide withdrawing. The portcullis rumbled up. Snowfog poured into the arch like water spilling from a breached dam. Jon guided his black courser forward, Ghost, padded beside the horse as if tethered to its shadow. Daenerys fell in line to his left, Arya to his right, slightly behind. Unsullied and northern guards formed rearwards, hooves muffled by the deepening hush of blue snow. They crossed the drawbridge. Behind them Winterfell loomed, torches winking like embers in spun glass. Jon felt as though they stepped out of an age and into a space between heartbeats where seasons paused to decide their faces. Southward the King's Road stretched in gentle descent, hedges rimed with azure frost. Ahead, dawn broke true at last, a smear of rose along the horizon. The blue snowflakes shimmered where sun glanced them, then melted into mist the color of old ghosts. Their journey had begun. By first nightfall, the party reached a hunter's lodge not far north of the ruins of Long Lake. Grey Worm's Unsullied cleared drifts from the sagging roof and erected a perimeter of spears. Tyrion coaxed embers in the hearth and noted sardonically that the table's lone bench still bore Tormund Giantsbane's axe scars from a drunken feast 2 winters back. Jon recognized them too and felt a pang. Giantsbane had ridden east with the free folk, chasing the sunrise long before the Night King's fall. Some losses thaw no matter how the world warms. They dined on salt cod, hard bread, and a thin stew Davos flavored with wild onion. Arya drifted near the door, ear to the wind. Moments later she slipped outside. Jon followed, finding her crouched beneath eaves. "Hoofbeats," she whispered, soft and measured, more than one rider. They alerted Grey Worm. Unsullied melted into snow-draped brush. Jon stepped forward with Ghost at heel, lantern raised. Out of pale fog emerged 3 riders clad in layered sealskin and wolf fur, Mormont men. At their heads sat diminutive Lady Lyanna, cheeks stung red, eyes blazing. "Your ravens were slow," she called. "Bears are not." Jon lowered the lantern. "You were bid to Winterfell, not south." Lyanna scowled. "I ride where threats roam. My Aunt Jorel scouts leagues behind with 24." She swung down, boots crunching glassy crust. "You'll need every claw you can muster." Tyrion appeared, lips pursed. "So many claws may defeat secrecy." "Secrecy," Lyanna snorted. "Blue snow falls from a clear sky. Secrecy froze when balance shattered. She shouldered past them into the lodge, demanding stew. By firelight, she recounted the hollow elk at the frozen tarn. Frost spreading through turf. John felt chill swallow his marrow. Grey worms spear but thudded once upon floorboards, an unsullied sign of ill omen. Daenerys listened, brow knit. Such creatures follow the stranger? Lynna shrugged. They follow nothing. They are voids wearing shapes. Tyrion rubbed temples. Void. The word slithered through smoke. A hungry one.
Jon met danerijskees.
South may bring shadows thicker than north. Then we bring fire, she answered. Not enough, Lyanna growled. She glanced at Arya, sharing some wordless accord only wolves knew. Steel your hearts. The void stalks warmth, not ice. Remember that. 2 nights later, they crossed the neck into the bog-blighted causeway. Blue snow surrendered to green mist rising off peat pools. Will-o-wisps bobbed between stunted ash trees, their lantern glow drab by comparison to the strange lambent sheen of frost dawn flakes that still clung to cart ruts. A great hush devoured their voices. Even Tyrion's quips came in whispers. Grey Worm halted scouts at a ford choked with lily pads whose petals glimmered blue despite no moon. He dipped his spear butt. Water lapped, silent and slick, swallowing ripples instantly. River sleeps, he murmured, unsullied superstition. Jon scanned the gloom. Ghost's hackles bristled. Bran's whistle lay at Jon's breast. He raised it to his lips and blew. A note like distant wind through reeds hissed out, barely audible.
Fogedid. Saim ver dieper o ruiven kroaked.
Jon waited. Heartbeats passed. Then the water beside the ford bubbled. A single lily pad lifted, revealing beneath it a silver coin, blank, large as a plate, balancing on the surface. No hand had placed it. It simply was. Snowlight pooled in its sheen. Arya drew needle. Lyanna unslung a short boar spear. Daenerys's palm brushed her poniard. The coin spun without touch, slowly, lazily. Its blank face rippled, half showing a reflection. Wolf, dragon, and something else flickering between as though deciding. Then it sank without splash, lily pad closing behind. Silence devoured the gasp that leapt from Jon's throat. He felt the balance shift inside his ribcage, as if his heart had nudged to one side. Daenerys staggered, steadying on his arm. Tyrion whispered, "Second spin." Lyanna breathed, "A tally." Grey Worm signaled advance. They crossed the ford, hooves churring on mud. No ripples stirred again. That night they camped in a ring of drowned stones, remnants of a first men cairn. Jon could not sleep. He watched the sky where stars glimmered faint behind drifting vapors. He thought of children's songs about the marsh, of frogs that sang riddles at moonrise, of ghosts in reeds whispering bargains. He wondered how many bargains his ancestors broke beyond counting, and how heavy their debts had grown. 5 days on, they reached the Red Fork and turned east. Blue snow ceased entirely. Instead, a soft rain fell, tinged faintly violet where it caught dusk. Farmers along hillocks bowed from doors, awed by dragons overhead. Some whispered prayers to gods old and new. Others offered bread and salt unasked. Word spread faster than ravens. The Dragon Queen rides with the Wolf King. The North rides south before even summer knows. At Maidenpool, they met a column of river lords under Edmure Tully, ragged but eager to honor ancient bonds. Tully's first embrace with Jon nearly crushed ribs. His greeting with Daenerys was stiffer, but when Regal soared low and merely cast wind, not flame, Edmure relaxed. He pledged 50 nights and grain enough to last winter's remainder. Tyrion brokered quartermaster details while Lyanna and Arya drilled with river archers, teaching them to notch black-shafted arrows Daenerys had brought. Shafts tipped with small slivers of the now-clear dragonglass. The tips glowed faint purple when moonlight struck them. On the 20th day since leaving Winterfell, the party emerged from wooded foothills into the Weald proper. A cradle of rolling green, dotted with barrow mounds older than recorded song. The eye in the Weald lay at its heart, a perfectly round lake of black water, as still as polished basalt. At dawn it mirrored sunrise. At dusk it drank sunset whole. No birds nested on its reedless shore. No fish rippled its surface. Villagers called it the Eye of the World. Grey Worm stationed unsullied at the lake's 4 cardinal points. Regal landed upon a crag just beyond the north spit, tail sweeping purple heather. Daenerys approached the waterline first, boots sinking into damp peat. Jon followed, Oathkeeper at his back, whistle at chest. Blue snow again drifted, but only above the lake, falling upward, pulled toward a something yet unseen. Each flake winked out where it touched midair. Arya knelt, brushing her fingertips across black mirror. Cold, she murmured, but not water cold, like steel left in shade. A shadow warped the lake's center. Ripples radiated outward, though no stone had fallen. The party tightened grips on spear, sword, bow. Out of the darkness rose a column of water, twisting as though woven by invisible loom. It solidified into the silver-haired woman. Her morning sword pointed skyward, violet heart pulsing in time with the water's swirl. Behind her the coin hung, larger now, spinning slower, blankness staring. She stepped onto the lake's skin. Water accepted her weight like a memory returning to its teller. She glided to the shore, pale eyes upon Jon. 3 times you spin, she said. Her voice was not quite human. Each syllable carried undertones like overlapping leaves rustling in different winds. Twice have you tilted wrong. Once remains. Jon advanced 1 step, snow crackling beneath boot. We seek balance too. Her lips curved, grief or humor, none could tell. Balance is not sought, it is paid. Daenerys drew up beside Jon. Then name the price. The price names itself. She lifted the sword. Frostfire cascaded down its length, violet changing to rose, rose to blue, blue to star white. Dragon flame burned the pact. Dragon blood must seal it. Regal roared, wings unfurling. The woman did not flinch. Her gaze rested on Daenerys and slid to Jon. Shared blood. Arya leapt forward, needle at guard. Lyanna's spear bristled. Unsullied tensed. Grey Worm's eyes narrowed behind helm slits. Jon raised a hand. A pact forged in blood need not be a life lost. He drew a dagger, not Valyrian, merely castle steel, and slashed his palm. Blood welled, black in twilight. He offered it. Take this freely. The stranger watched, expression unreadable. Offer given. She lifted her free palm. But not sufficient. Blood without flame is ash on wind. Daenerys stepped, and flame without blood is hunger. She unsheathed a thin dragonglass knife, one of the crystalline clear ones. She sliced her own palm. Blood dripped onto the blade, beating along ridges that glowed violet where red touched. She pressed the knife's flat against Jon's bleeding hand. Their blood mingled, steaming. The woman's eyes widened, an emotion that might be surprise. The morning sword's light fluttered. She tilted her head. Shared blood, shared fire. Her voice softened. Coin pauses. Behind her the blank coin slowed until its spin barely perceptible. She stepped forward. Jon felt a cold like deep water seep into bones, but within it a calm, as though judgment weighed and found no more to add. She reached out and touched their joined hands. A pulse shot through Jon, memory unfurling. The children's weirwood caves. Dragonglass blades plunged into men. A boy screaming, his eyes turned blue. Leaf weeping. Promises whispered beneath black moon. Centuries stretched like ice cracking across a lake. Daenerys trembled. Scales of unseen dragons flashed across her vision. Valyria in bloom. Fire eclipsing sun. Chains melting. She saw a shadow of herself standing amid ash in a city of bells, watched by eyes pleading for mercy. She flinched, but warmth met her. Jon's steady grip, pulling her from the edge. The woman drew back. One more debt remains, she said. A face for the face stolen. She lifted the sword high. Light on its blade resolved into a mosaic of countless visages. Men, women, children, the dead who marched, the living who fell. Who gives this face? Silence hammered the wield. Unsullied did not breathe. Arya's knuckles whitened. Tyrion's mouth moved, but no sound. Lyanna glanced at Jon, wolf eyes pleading, daring. Then a new voice. I will. Jaqen Hagar stepped from between two alder trunks, cloak dripping with leaf frost. He wore no mask now. His face was weary, lined far beyond the Jaqen Jon remembered atop a Harrenhal tower. He approached unarmed. The woman inclined head. A faceless man offers a face. Jaqen smiled faintly. A man has worn many. One more is a bargain. He kneeled, baring throat. Take and free the scales. Arya's breath caught. Tears pricked her lids. Jon tightened grip on Daenerys's blood-slicked hand. The morning sword descended, but instead of biting flesh, it halted a hair above Jaqen's skin. Light flared. Jaqen's features blurred, melting like wax in a furnace, until his face became a blank of smooth flesh. Eyes, nose, mouth gone, only skin. He did not move. The sword lifted. Jaqen rose faceless, untrembling. The woman touched his shoulder. Face given, debt sealed. Behind her the coins stopped spinning. One side showed a dire wolf, the other a three-headed dragon. Edgeon, it hovered, then dissolved into blue snow that drifted upward and vanished. The morning sword dulled, its violet heart flickering to soft ember. The woman looked upon Jon and Daenerys one last time. Balance endures until weighed again. She turned, walked back across the lake. Water unruffled beneath her. At the center she paused, sword beneath palm, and slowly sank, ripples swallowing her form. Blue snow ceased. Moonlight spilled upon black water blank as slate. Unsullied exhaled as one. Ghost whined softly and lay down. Regal tucked wings, humming deep in chest. Jon released Daenerys's hand. Their mingled blood on steel glistened like garnet. He looked to Bran's whistle. It glimmered, then crumbled to sawdust. Lyanna spoke first. Is it done? Arya wiped eyes with gloved knuckles. Nothing is ever done, she said, staring at faceless Jaqen. He bowed to her, perhaps recognition, then faded back into alder shade without sound. Tyrion drew a shaky breath. If the scale is level, what now? Jon sheathed his dagger, clasped Daenerys's hand anew. Now we see which face the world chooses, he said, and choose ours in return. Daenerys squeezed back. Regal roared skyward. Flame burst gold and harmless into the stars. The eye in the weald remained black, still, but now its surface held a faint shimmer, as if new stories already swam beneath, waiting for dawn.